the financial house of cards collapses, and the overinflated stock market plunges into a Great Depression. A financial panic grips the world. For the majority, it means the interminable line outside factory gates, desperately hoping for a job that rarely comes. It means hunger and a march of the unemployed in the nation's capital. With acute domestic problems, America would now isolate herself more than ever from the international scene. It started in America, but practically overnight an economic blizzard swept the world. In Japan, France, Britain, always the unemployed, the soup kitchens, the grinding poverty, and the despair.
Czechoslovakia has a new Prime Minister, Army Inspector General Jan Siropi, and almost his first act is to organize a personal appeal to every Czech for a subscription to the national defense. So a personal letter is signed, sealed, and sent out to every Czech patriot, a ring of paper for the defense of the homeland. And every postman becomes a link in the nation's defense. Meanwhile, on the border towns in the Sudeten area, new colors for army regiments now mobilized on a full war basis. The crack little army of Central Europe, trained, mechanized, mobile, manning its own Maginot Line, still hoping that the tension may end in peace. And Czechoslovakia's defense corps of women, joining with the men in preparing for the moment that we pray may never come.
Marriages between Jews and German citizens or those of similar blood are forbidden.
The marriage law, one of the Nuremberg decrees of 1935, was aimed at protecting the purity of German blood. The Nazis divided people into racial types. They said Germans were descended from the Aryan race. Pure Aryan Germans could be recognized from their blonde hair and blue eyes. It was all a fantasy, but the fantasy was dressed up as science. Germans were being taught to think of other races as somehow less than perfect. And the German people bought the lie. Signs cropped up. Jews not wanted here. With the Nuremberg decrees, this discrimination was set down in stone. German Jews lost their citizenship. They lost the right even to call themselves German.
Before Christmas, I went for a journey through the districts along the German border, between Karlovy Vary, or Karlsbad, and Liberec, or Reichenberg, which are inhabited by a preponderance of German-speaking people. These districts, which are mainly industrial, and which depended for their prosperity upon foreign trade, are suffering severely from the effects of the world economic crisis and of the increasing tendency towards autarky. Unemployment is very great, of course. The sufferings of these Czechoslovak Germans are due in no small measure to the selfish economic policy of Germany and to the past unpatriotic actions of their own employers, who are mainly Germans of the opposition. Yet they are represented to the victims as being the fault of the Czechoslovak government. The local newspapers, which are the only ones that most people read, and which are all owned by opposition Germans, contain little besides shameless misrepresentations of the true situation and of the measures which are taken by the authorities to ameliorate it. There are nevertheless, even in these heavily propaganded districts, considerable numbers of democratic Germans who are loyally collaborating with the government, in which indeed they have their own representatives. There is hope, therefore, that the insistent friendliness of the democratic majority of the population, German no less than Czech, will eventually triumph over that hysteria which is at present causing so much heartburning among the 3¼ million German-speaking subjects of Czechoslovakia.
Das ist das freie deutsche Manneswort, das man bei uns unterdrücken will, aber nicht für immer. Es kommt der Tag, und wir werden mit allen Mitteln, die uns zu Gebote stehen, unserem Vaterlande Deutschland zugeführt werden.
Après l'interruption des fêtes de la Pentecôte, les pourparlers d'Évian ont repris ce matin. L'arrivée de M. Jox et des membres de la délégation française. M. Jox arrive le premier avec les autres membres de la délégation française. D'abord ses deux principaux collaborateurs, M. Roland Cadet et le général Simon, et les autres membres de la délégation, M. Bruno Deleusse, Bernard Tricot, le colonel Seguin-Pazy.
At 10:15 last night, the radio sounded out. Complete mobilization was ordered. Our struggle is just, said the radio, for motherland and freedom. Long live Czechoslovakia. As these words sounded, the thousands in the street uttered a single deep-throated cheer. It was the roar of a people who says, better to die on your feet than to live like slaves on your knees. Trams were piled into, taxicabs and private cars commandeered. Thousands rushed frantically to clasp their wives, perhaps for the last time, collect a knife, fork, and spoon, 2 days of food, and an extra pair of shoes. From the railway stations named after Masaryk, the President of Czechoslovakia, and Wilson, the President of the United States of America, these soldiers to be fanned out in dozens of directions to stand under arms in their appointed places. And I have never seen any people so calm and self-controlled in a comparable crisis.
And then a gasp of amazement and satisfaction runs round the world. The Prime Minister decides to fly to a personal meeting with the German Chancellor. The tension eases, as if the world had suddenly seen a gleam of hope in the darkness of despair. For behind those days of crisis has loomed a dark spectre. Yet the world has realized that war over 3.5 million people in the present land of Bohemia would be a folly and a crime. So at Heston, after 69 years of a busy life, Mr. Chamberlain makes his first trip in a plane. There's proof of his determination.
The German Chancellor, because the situation seems to me to be one in which discussion between him and me may have useful consequences. My policy has always been to try to ensure peace. Next, I want to say that the settlement of the Czechoslovakian problem, which has now been achieved, is, in my view, only the prelude to a larger settlement in which all Europe may find peace.
Prague is a sad place now, but not a dangerous place, not even an uncomfortable one. Food here is plentiful and good as usual. Prices are so far pretty normal. There is not, so far, a shortage of coal, and the electric light has not been cut off. Above all, there is not a sign of Jew baiting or of any other chauvinistic outburst. What I have found in wandering about and talking to all sorts of people is this. Everyone is determined to try and rebuild some sort of a tolerable Czechoslovakia, even though the change of frontiers has dealt frightful blows to trade, and many people expect as much as 1 million unemployed during the winter.
Jahre nachdem in Versailles unter Nichtbeachtung des Selbstbestimmungsrechts der Völker ein Staat geschaffen worden war, der unter Missachtung historischer Gegebenheiten die verschiedensten Nationalitäten mit brutaler Gewalt unterdrückte, zerfiel dieser Staat wie ein Kartenhaus. Die Slowakei erklärte ihre Selbstständigkeit. In diesem Augenblick kam der tschechische Staatspräsident Dr. Hacha in Begleitung des Außenministers Schwalkowski nach Berlin, um das weitere Schicksal des verfallenen Staates vertrauensvoll in die Hände des Führers zu legen. Nach Unterzeichnung der weltgeschichtlichen Erklärung, mit der sich das tschechische Volk unter den Schutz des Deutschen Reiches stellte, rückten auf Befehl des Führers die Soldaten der deutschen Wehrmacht unverzüglich in die bedrohten Gebiete Böhmens und Mährens ein, um überall Sicherheit und Ordnung wiederherzustellen.